There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't.
She also took questions in that room. Jonathan, now your top line thoughts on what you just heard.
Well, this was a fascinating moment because this false narrative could not have been spread without the people in that room. And you saw the reaction of the journalists, and you can understand why. That is, these are the same people that expressed no interest in investigating these questions and just promulgated what was a false narrative. Now, we know that President Obama was told early on that Hillary Clinton was going to invent this Russian conspiracy theory, that her campaign was moving in that direction. And yet we find out now that even though the intelligence community rejected that assessment, they effectively quashed that assessment and ordered a new one and then leaked to the press information that was clearly false.
So, Jason, you were still in Congress when all of this went down. You left in 2017. We should also point out, by the way, that Caroline Leavitt was talking about the request from the Trump administration to unseal the grand jury testimony. Apparently, a federal judge in Florida just denied that request. More on that later. But what do you think about everything that we heard here in this briefing and the claims, it apparently backed up by this 2020 assessment from the House Intelligence Committee? That Barack Obama was behind this bogus conspiracy to try to tie Donald Trump's victory to Russian interference.
I cannot even express how stunning this is. The President of the United States was engaged in a conspiracy. That's the allegation. I'm so disappointed in Barack Obama. He puts himself up there as a scandal-free president. Now, look how great it was for 8 years. That guy run the screen, he was lying to us. And he was part of concocting a conspiracy to deceive the American people. It doesn't get any worse than that. And how many times did I get a lecture from the Democrats about nobody's above the law, nobody's above the law? They all said it. They drove it home every time. And we'll see where they are now. They're going to run for the hills. And Jonathan Turley is right. He is absolutely right. Where is the intellectual curiosity? Where are they going to be in terms of returning their Pulitzer Prizes and all the awards that they won and patting themselves on the back on how great they were on getting Donald Trump? They were all lying to us, and they got snookered, and they should be held accountable. And I want to see some people in handcuffs. They have to be held accountable, or it'll happen again. But remember, you had an Obama administration and later a Biden administration did everything they could to bury that and allow people like me. I was the chairman of the Oversight Committee. They would not provide these documents, and that deep state continued on in perpetuity to hide that information that was clearly asked under subpoena and never did happen. And that is just fundamentally wrong. And all these Democrats on their high horse telling us about how they got to save democracy. You lying sack. I can't say it at this hour, but I'm telling you, it is so infuriating because they lied to us. And
Jason,
they should pay the price.
You know
no
what?
more free passes.
Hold that thought, because we're going to have more after the break.
This report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
Former President Obama hitting back at the calls that he be criminally investigated, saying, quote, "Our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response, but these claims are outrageous enough to merit one. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election, but did not successfully manipulate any votes," end quote. All right, so Jessica, some of the information that has been declassified is very compelling. Now, the Obama statement is making it look like, well, these were just some Discord QAnon chats. But when you have the former director of the CIA pushing back against high-level operatives within his agency, saying there is no there there, and he's like, let's find a there. Isn't that problematic enough for Obama?
Sometimes I think, like, what day is it? What year is it?
Democrats?
This is such old news. It's beyond comprehension that we're talking about. And I understand that this Epstein situation is very tricky for the administration. And day by day, it gets worse and worse and worse. But they are pulling out all of the greatest hits to try to inflame the minds of their most, conspiracy theory addled base, so that they hear Brennan, Clapper, Obama, Hillary, and they get activated, and suddenly they won't be mad at Trump anymore for not releasing the Epstein files or whatever he had to do with any of it. It's preposterous that we were talking about Hillary Clinton's emails again in year 2025.
We spent years on this story. No, let me, we had to take this story seriously for years, and it was false.
It wasn't false.
No. For people to understand what happened, all right? Because the problem with this story is that nobody knows what you're talking about. When Trump won in 2016, the intel community concluded that Russia didn't have a hand in his victory. Instead of accepting the inclusion, Obama determined and wanted a new conclusion. So he sent Brennan running to come up with a new conclusion, that there was some kind of trivial involvement that then they could feed out to the media. And coincidentally, dozens of news organizations said that Trump was in bed with Putin and that somehow Brennan knew. Brennan knew. How did he know?
There was no proof.
There was no proof. There was no proof.
Why did Durham do nothing then?
But no, let me finish. They amplified a false conclusion that Trump colluded with Russia in 2016. We had to spend years dealing with that. And now we're actually getting investigation, and you're saying, no, you know what? You guys should just move on. You guys should just move. You're saying the same effing thing about Biden's brain. You guys spent 4 years telling us that Joe Biden was fine. You covered up for an invalid. And then when we get the truth, it's like, oh, you know what? It's time. We got to look forward. We got to start talking about what's there. And you can bring up Epstein all you want. We, unlike Democrats, we can handle 2 things, 3 things, 4 things at once.
Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, no. Have you been listening to the right lately? The right is more on top of Epstein than the Democrats are. The Democrats never cared about Epstein until they saw a political motivation. The right was into the Epstein story because women were being sex trafficked. We actually cared. But now you're like, ooh, Epstein, a political angle. Ooh, this is fantastic. Save me your selective outrage.
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.